Hello there. Welcome to Existential Sunday. If you're watching this on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, welcome to you. Most of you watch this on replay. Now, listen, if we don't know each other, my name is Corey. I don't always do that when I say my name. My name is Corey. I am a husband and father, speaker, writer, thinker, disruptor. I fully embrace the disruptor part too. And you're watching Existential Sunday. This is an extension of the podcast that I host every week called Existential, where we wrestle with issues of justice, faith, and culture. And I guess the giant umbrella of the whole thing would be that we are actively deconstructing and decolonizing constantly faith, worldviews, political views, long-held traditions and beliefs. So that's what you're a part of now. And if you're watching this via replay, welcome. And if you're new, welcome. If you're watching this live and you've been watching every week, welcome to you as well. Feel free to hit the share button if you'd like to. Leave a comment so I can come by later and say good morning or afternoon, whatever it is where you are, so I can come by and greet you today. And if you want to tag people in the comments who you think this would benefit from hearing this, feel free to do so. And one other thing, don't forget, those of you who are part of the Patreon community, I appreciate you so much. Tomorrow is our town hall. What in the world is going on? So we're going to be talking like just open conversations, like we're all going to hang out together in a giant virtual room. Maybe it's giant. I don't know. Whatever. You know what I'm trying to say. We're going to gather in this room. We're going to hang out. We're going to talk about the episodes lately, what's been happening in the world, some of our thoughts, feelings. If you're an introvert, it's totally fine. You don't have to say anything. If you're an extrovert, it's totally fine. You can say all you want. It's just going to be us hanging out and talking about what's happening lately. So don't forget, tomorrow, I want to say it is at 4 p.m. God's time, which is here on the West Coast. All right. I don't have a lot to say to you today. I have one thing that I think is important, and it's still like churning in my brain even right now as I get ready to speak, right? But I'll start by saying this. Probably a few months ago, I was watching Madagascar, which is one of my favorite Pixar films. I really do hope that's Pixar. I'm pretty sure it is. Anyway, I love Madagascar. And I love the penguins of Madagascar, probably the most. They're the funniest to me. And there was this one movie, I don't even remember which movie it was. It could have been Madagascar 1, 2, or 3, or the Penguins movie. Don't know which one it was, but in one of them, the lead penguin guy, he has these gold teeth, and he says, "I spent my money on these gold teeth so that I could eat apples. It turns out I don't like apples." And I don't know why it stuck with me so much so that I wrote it down. I filed it away, and I was like, one day I'm going to sit with this like it's an ancient riddle, and it is going to come alive for me. And it is starting to come alive for me after this week, because one of the other things I've really been thinking about a lot this week and processing this week, ever since someone made a comment on Facebook, which is how these things normally go. Someone makes a comment on Facebook, and then I start going, oh, yeah, that was stupid. But why was that stupid? Why was that so frustrating to me? And it's a comment that happens all the time, about this notion of being divisive, that people will look at the work you're doing if you are challenging the status quo, if you are a disruptor, if you are doing what I believe to be the spiritual work of trying to ensure that there is justice for all, that you're using your platform to do that. It's what I'm doing here, using my platform to do that. I'm not a community organizer. I am not a political activist. I don't even necessarily consider myself an activist. Some may. What I'm doing is using the platform that I have, using the gifts that I have to raise awareness that there are people in this world who are denied justice based on arbitrary things like their skin color, like where they live, where they're from, their religious beliefs, their sexual orientation, which is none of anybody's business, how they view themselves and their identity, that those people get denied justice. And so when you do that work and you challenge the status quo, what people will throw at you is that you're being divisive. And as I was thinking about this, like being divisive thing, I thought, you know what? You can keep your expectation that this work, the work of justice, is a kumbaya around the fire work, because it is not. You can look back at Dr. King and say, and in the United States, we like to do this. We look back at Dr. King and go, Dr. King was so about peace and bringing everybody together, and he wasn't disruptive at all. He just had a dream that all men and women, boys and girls, would join hands. And yes, ultimately, that would be amazing. But here's what we have found. And when I say we, I mean Black folks, especially Black folks with some proximity to evangelical faith, is that we found that we wanted reconciliation, but not as an end. We thought that reconciliation, that racial reconciliation in religious space, multiculturalism in religious space, would bring us the freedom to be fully ourselves without the ridicule, without the microaggression, without the suppression, without the devaluing, without the name calling, the making fun of, the belittling of white supremacy. We thought that racial reconciliation would bring us that. We thought multiculturalism would bring us that freedom. And what we found out, much like the penguin found out with the gold teeth, is that we actually don't like reconciliation, because it actually didn't bring us freedom. It brought us more bondage in the form of assimilation. It got us close enough to places of authority, to opportunities to lead, to feeling included, but it actually didn't get us all the way there. We still were second-class citizens. You ain't got to take my word for it. There's probably people in the comments right now with some giant amens in all caps, because this is what they experienced. And not just people of color, women. Our brothers and sisters and folks from the queer community experience this now on a regular basis, that they are not free. And I'm not interested in inviting people into spaces where they are not free, because the goal is not to all be in the same room around the same fire singing songs. The goal is that there be justice, full dignity for everyone. That's the goal. If you think about what Jesus was trying to do, I mean, you know, I think this is interesting because as I've thought a lot about this week, about, like, you know, my tradition, for those of you who don't know, I come out of the Christian tradition. I laugh because, like, the only reason sometimes I stop short of saying I am a Christian is because I don't want to argue with Christians about what that means. because it's like there's a whole sect of Christians who believe that they get to anoint folks as Christian or not based on what they think you should believe and how they think you should act, especially after last week when, you know, we started talking about the afterlife and people were like, oh my God. But anyway, coming out of the Christian tradition, I think a lot about how, I mentioned it last week, how much of faith and spirituality becomes arbitrary and metaphor, so much so that it loses value for the things that affect us on a day-to-day basis. I might have told you guys before, but I remember being around some Christians who would only offer like resources as long as they could also offer Jesus. And I actually kind of wonder if the resources and the offering of resources is not actually Christ. If rather than like trying to introduce people, I guess I'm now talking directly to my evangelical friends, rather than trying to introduce people to something they can hold in their heart and is a guarantee of a good life after they die, what if we offered them things that gave them a good life here and now? I mean, I'm even now, my head hearing up, don't lay up treasures here on earth where moth and whatever destroy it. And I know that that's maybe where some Christians would think like, well, Jesus said not to lay up treasure here. I'm not necessarily talking about treasure. I'm talking about food. How about a decent education? How about the ability to walk the streets without fear for your life from those who should serve and protect you? How about that? I'm talking about that. I'm talking about imagining the kind of world where everyone is free from oppression. And folks that may think that this kind of language is just about Black folks, just about people of color, and we don't give a shit about white folks. That is actually not true. I don't know anyone, despite the fact that there are lots of reasons through American history for Black folks to take this position. I don't know of any Black person that I am in community with who would say, I hate white people. That holds the posture or the demeanor that I hate white people. What even when you hear Black folks using strong language about white folks or white supremacy, it's not from this place of hatred. It's from this place of we just want the same. We don't even want more. The same value placed on our lives that our brothers and sisters from the LGBTQ plus community are saying. We just want the same value on our lives. I find myself in these like situations because I don't know, I've had proximity to white folks for a very long time. And so I find myself with, white folks sometimes that like really want to ask and challenge me in person. And I really don't mind it. For folks that I actually know and have been in community with, I really don't mind the opposite perspective, so long as the opposite perspective is not one that wants to keep me and other folks who look like me in emotional and psychological chains. You see, this is the thing, right? I forget who it was that said it. It might have been James Baldwin. I believe it was James Baldwin. And I'm going to paraphrase that the idea is we can get along so long as us getting along doesn't mean that I'm, that you get to be supreme to me. And I don't want people to get it twisted and believe that like the goal is just to get along. That's not the goal. So I'm having this conversation with a friend of mine at a country club. We're golfing. It turns out this friend of mine is like a, not quite Newsmax, but a Fox News watcher. Y'all know I've been pretty strong in what I'd say about Fox News. I still think they're trash. I think Tucker Carlson is a harbinger of racist ideologies that are harmful. But we have this very interesting dialogue. And in this dialogue that we're having, at one point, it dawned on me that so much of what people learn about faith in the United States is a very individual, capitalistic form of faith. And I think I told this person that I was golfing with, I said, I would have more respect for the Christian leaders who said, hey, the ideas of Paul and Jesus and the writers of the Old Testament, they don't scale to the millions of people we have living in the United States. I wouldn't be like, yeah, I agree with you. Although in part, I think some of that is true, but I would have it, at least respect it. But what we have is like people acting like the words of Jesus, the socialistic ideals of some of the writers of scripture aren't there, that we're supposed to not see that and supposed to continue on about our lives, looking out for number one, thinking about God's personal call for my life, the thing that God wants me as an individual to do. And every now and again, we come together as a community to do some good for some Black and brown folks or some folks in Africa or whatever that like are dealing with lack of water or whatever. But most of the time, what we're talking about is how I, as an individual living in the suburbs, can live a happy life with my wife, my husband, my kids, my dog, and at work. And again, many of us who even set out in religious space to find meaning, we kind of feel like the penguin who bought the gold teeth to eat apples and realized that we don't like apples. And now we're stuck with these gold teeth that feel kind of worthless. So many of you who are watching this, I hope there's a lot of you watching this who found yourself a part of like religious space, spiritual spaces, and felt like there was something missing, something wasn't there. Like, and now you have this like these ideas and things that you can't shake, and you have these like these old constructs that you feel like you're supposed to stay tethered to because you bought them, but they don't jive with where you are now in your life, with how you see the world now, with the ideas that you can't shake now. And I know of folks that have wound up in therapy. I myself have found myself many times in a feeling psychologically terrorized by the thoughts and ideas that like are now present with me that are in such contrast with the ideas and the beliefs that I had before when I was I felt more a part of the tribe. And now you also feel this disconnection from the tribe because you now become an outcast. But I'll remind you one more time, for those, just in case you didn't see this a couple weeks ago, and I apologize for those of you who are watching this. If it's no, I don't apologize. I started to apologize, and I take it back. I don't apologize. Some of you are watching this and you've heard me say these things before. I mean, hell, to be honest with you, I probably repeat myself quite a bit. Oh man, Jesus repeated himself quite a bit too. Martin Luther King did. I mean, I think I guess I could, kind of in the same way that any of us could compare ourselves to anybody who has something to say. Anyone with something to say is saying that same thing over and over again. So I spent too much time on a not apology. Much like Abraham, who had to disassociate himself from the customs and ways of being that he knew his whole life, many of us now find ourselves in the middle of nowhere, spiritually, politically, going, I came out here to follow a voice, and I'm not always sure where that voice is leading me, but I do believe it's better than when I felt like I was in bondage with the other thing. And for those of you who watch Existential Sunday every week, those of you that are listening to the podcast, especially those of you that are part of Patreon, what I hope for you as we close today, what I hope for you is that you feel better than when you were in bondage to beliefs that you no longer subscribe to, but you were too afraid to tell anybody, too afraid to even let yourself believe it. What I hope is that though you still got the gold teeth, to stretch this analogy all the way out, I hope that you feel that they're more useful. Maybe it's not apples you like, maybe it's pears. But you got like a foundation, and now we can find a better way to use it. Yeah, I think that lands. If it didn't, who cares? I already said it. Can't take it back. Folks, I so appreciate all of you who watch this, who share it. Those of you who already shared it, thank you so much for sharing it. Thank you for the comments. I'm going to come by now and say high five, fist bump, thumbs up. I don't like, sometimes I comment, but I really don't have time to comment on everything that everyone says. So if you ever like leave a really long comment in the comments and like I just thumbs up it, I really did read it and it really was meaningful and I appreciate you sharing it. But if I read all the comments, that's all I would do. And I just can't do that. All right, patrons, see you tomorrow, 4 o'clock, God's time. Grace and peace to all of you. Until next time.